right, folks, thank you so much for joining us. This is Meet Music Knoxville, the show where I, your host, Nick Horner, has no fucking clue what he's doing. He just gets together with people here in town and that he hasn't met before, and we talk music and we learn about all the great things that they're up to. And I'm excited today because our guest is someone who I've actually, and you don't know this, so I've wanted to have for a long time, because roughly right around the time when I moved here in 2020. Late 2020, I was on Facebook constantly trying to meet people through the Knoxville Musicians Seeking Musicians page. And at some point, someone posted about this guest today, and I saw that it was a metal and opera crossover person. And I was like, man, this is going to be a great, like when the show started, I was like, this is going to be a great guest. But then I couldn't figure out who this person was. And like a month ago, I'm getting out of work downtown Knoxville, status dough. I leave, and some guy sees my ukulele on my back and says, hey, is that a violin? I'm like, no, it's ukulele. He's like, and he starts telling me a story about how he was taking lessons from someone who is a classical and metal performer here in Knoxville. And I asked for the artist's name, and it turns out it was this person who's sitting here with me today, Julie Bélanger Roy.
Bélanger Roy.
Bélanger Roy.
Oh, you were
okay,
close.
there we go. Okay.
That's your time
I didn't know.
zero.
See, I saw it was ROI instead of ROI, so I wasn't quite sure.
That's the old way of writing Roy. It's in Old French. So,
Oh.
So at the time they would probably say Roy instead of Roy, but
Got it.
yeah.
Cool.
There you go.
Well, anyway, so this is a long time coming. You didn't know that, but this is a long time
I
coming.
had no idea.
Yeah. Well, and I have as we talked a little bit, as we were setting up here, it's like I definitely have a soft spot for this. I know a lot of people who do this crossover metal classical thing, and I love it, and I'm glad there's someone else who's doing it here in town. So great to meet you.
Great to meet you as well.
Yeah, and thank you for coming and hanging out and sweltering with me on my porch. It's like getting verklempt over here. It's a lot.
It's not that bad.
Yeah. Well, we got some drinks. We're keeping it.
Super good.
Yeah. So this is great. Where you are from Quebec? Where in Quebec?
Close to Montreal. So I lived in Pincourt. We're a tiny city, about maybe like 45 minutes from Montreal. That's where I'm from originally. Moved to Les Laurentides, which is a little bit more north, where you have all the ski resorts. We were super lost in nature, and I loved it. Not so much as a teenager when you can't get out because you don't drive a car yet, but it's gorgeous. It's really beautiful. And then moved in Montreal to study, and moved to Knoxville after.
So straight from Montreal to Knoxville.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. And
That was a shock.
yeah, I can only imagine.
Well, you said you're from Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
That's
And,
what it's
and I
about.
know a little bit, and I've spent some time in Montreal. So I know a little bit what that's about. McGill, or where would you study?
I was at Le Conservatory of Montreal.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny because I think those are probably, the two top schools.
Yeah.
Well, they were at the time, so I shouldn't say that because I haven't been there studying there for a while. But at the time, they were pretty much the leading schools, and the French people, like French speakers, would go to Conservatoire, and then you would have the English speakers going to McGill.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Huh. Now, obviously, you grew up speaking French. That's part of your identity. I'm so intrigued about how heavy metal. I just darted from one place to another. Let's talk about your childhood musical background. Did your parents do music?
Yes. Okay. So not my mom, but my dad was really much into music. He would listen to a lot of classical music, but also all sorts of things. He's really he would listen to folk. He would listen to singer-songwriters. Also things like Supertramp and everything mixed up. So so he was the musical one, and he took violin lessons at some point, and I think I was like 7 or 8, and I always wanted to do like him and try and play on it. So he would just let me fiddle on the fiddle on it, and at some point he thought I was kind of more serious about it then, and instead of taking the money for his lessons, he let me have the lessons. So
cool.
It was a big sacrifice, and I'm very thankful for his sacrifice.
Oh yeah, and I mean, who'd have thunk it would just that was what would spawn like a lifetime of music making.
Yeah,
that's crazy. Now, but you mentioned fiddling, and I have to ask. It's like there's an astounding fiddle tradition up in that area. Did you grow up doing any of that stuff, or was that something you were removed from?
So I can't say that I'm playing with the lilt or like the really like folk technique, because I really was formed as a classical musician, but I'm totally into folk. I absolutely love folk. So what happened is that while I was taking my classical lessons on the violin, I got like really bored of just doing classical, and I told my teacher at some point that we needed to go into folk music, otherwise I would quit. So I didn't give him much of a choice.
Yeah.
So and he was a really, really cool teacher, really nice, very open-minded. So he totally like tailored the lessons for me to be able to do some reels and jigs and stuff like that.
Oh, cool.
So definitely like early on, very early on. I think for the classical musicians out there, I mean, I was following the Suzuki books. I finished maybe the first one, and it was like, okay, I'm bored now. I don't like that stuff. Like, please, like. So we continued after this, doing classical, but mixing with some folk music. So.
Yeah, and you were mostly violin, but did you play viola as well? Did I read that someplace?
Not before I was 16, I think, or 17, 16.
Oh, so you started kind of recently.
On the late side,
Yeah.
Well, late side. I mean, I started with violin, which a lot of violists do. Less nowadays, though. I think more people are starting right on the viola. So.
Yeah.
But I was a violinist first.
Yeah. When when you were at conservatoire, you because you're a singer as well. Like that's the thing. You're a singer as well, but also a violinist. Yeah.
So the way it happened was when I auditioned in violin, I was on the waiting list to get at the conservatory, and it was really hard to get in there.
Yeah.
They didn't take many people every year. So I was on the waiting list, and the viola teacher who was on the committee, the judges, kept calling and saying I would make a great violist. And I was like, I play violin. Like, why do you even ask me to be a violist? So that's how I turned into a violist, because I thought I'm just going to do both. So yeah, I'll learn viola, but I'm going to keep playing violin on the side. And they don't necessarily encourage that because it's bigger. They want you to really learn the viola and get comfortable on it and not be out of tune.
Yeah.
So they were kind of more of thinking, stay on the viola, but I would do both. And I continued to always do both. So I entered this way into conservatory, and I actually liked the viola. It was like maybe it's more metal, I don't know. It has that deep sound and like, melancholy in it. I don't know, there's something. So I'm still a huge fan of violin, but yeah, I really like the instrument, so I stuck with it, and that's what I did, in my professional classical career.
Yeah.
As for voice, I fell into bands that were like melodic metal, and like I had a boyfriend who introduced me to that, and I just really loved how some of them would mix classical with metal, and that opened to me a totally new door. And I would sing on top of those songs, and then I had a friend who was like, "Wow, you really actually have what you would need to be a classical singer." And I was like, "I don't know," and he pushed me to sing for his teacher. He was a pianist, and he was learning to accompany classical singers. So I sang for her, which was kind of one of the lead accompanists of the program at the conservatory. She really liked my voice. She made me meet. She introduced me to the voice teacher there at the conservatory, and she gave me free lessons in voice, and that's how I started. So and then I auditioned, got in. So, but yeah.
What kind of what's your fach?
Contralto.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Oh,
for
cool.
now it's like in between lyric and dramatic.
Huh.
So lots of heavy stuff.
Yeah.
So more like Verdi and Wagner, and
Yeah. Oh, wow.
I'm working on moving my voice faster, you know, the coloratura stuff. But for me, it's like moving an elephant, so it's tricky. But you know,
Yeah. But there's something to be said for just really leaning into those things that like feel good to sing.
yes,
You know.
yes. But it's always good to be agile.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, so that brings me to ask you the question, since as we were saying, it's the first time we meet.
Oh, yeah.
So how you said you have also a training in voice, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's the trailers I was telling you about. Speed bumps over here in South Knoxville. Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's a gentleman with a bucket loader.
Sorry, I'm the one
Next
who wanted to be
door.
outside.
That's okay. Dare I pause this and we just move indoors? Because I don't think he's stopping anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't think he's gonna go anywhere.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. Just get that angle quick. Hold it like this off the side.
Okay.
Grab a few less pops that way, you know?
That's true.
Okay. All right. I think we're good. This is gonna work. Okay. Anyway, you were asking about me.
Yes. About your voice.
Voice. Yeah. I studied lyric baritone. I studied in college, but fell in love kind of with jazz a little bit. A lot of like sort of new music jazz stuff. And then did a bunch of stuff. I ended up in New York, and in New York I kind of really fell in love with folk music, and that ended up being kind of my pathway. And that's how I ended up down here, was touring and found the area and just kind of fell in love with it. So, I mean, I'm from a pretty rural part of Pennsylvania, so it was like, this feels way more like home than, you know, New York really does. There's a ton I miss about New York, but...
How long did you stay in New York?
8 years.
That's a long time.
Yeah. Definitely was home, but you know, it's good to be here. Yeah. So that's me. I feel like
That's kind of crazy, though. That's a lot of things, and like going from classical voice, lyric baritone to going.
Yeah, but
at the same time, I mean, who am I to talk?
Yeah. Right. Turn that a little bit more. Sorry. That's how it goes. Yeah, you know, yeah, like yes and no. It was one of those things where I ended up studying a little bit in high school. It was great for what it was, but, you know, I never was like super into classical music in that I felt that was like my path. It was just the thing you did. It was like the safe bet. Like if you're going to go into music.
Oh, believe me, I know everything about the same path.
Yeah. But, yeah. And, you know, and that's what's so cool about, you know. So let me bounce back to you. When did heavy metal, like, end up being a part of your world?
Yeah, about the same time I switched to viola. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
I was saying that viola is heavy metal in a way. Yeah, around 16, 17 years old, I think. It's kind of late for... I know so many people who fall into it way before that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really into, like... Before that, I was into, a lot of medieval music.
Oh,
I was
cool.
like in love with medieval music.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Like I would pick up all the tunes by ear and play them on the recorder.
Yeah.
And play them on the violin, sing in Old French.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you would show me text in Old French, and I would actually understand.
Oh man.
Yeah, I was so into.
You know what's funny? You're the second guest I've had that has that background.
Really?
Margarita Fava, who's a jazz pianist here in town, her parents were really into medieval music. Oh. And so that's part of her background as well. So if you guys want to start a consort of some kind, you know, you can look her up.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's super cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I was really into all that, and then and folk as well, as I said earlier, and that boyfriend just like introduced me a little bit to some kind of, I would say, like easy to listen okay, so some metal that's a little lighter,
Yeah.
not too many growls or things like that when you start, and then
What were those bands? I'm so curious.
Well, actually, the first one, I'm not even sure you can. I don't think I would put this into metal, but Stabbing Westward was one of the bands that he introduced me to that I really got into at that time. But then like bands like Sonata Arctica and then Nightwish and all those more melodic metal bands. So Rhapsody, I was a huge fan of Rhapsody. Well, now Rhapsody of Fire, but yeah.
Right.
Oh man, I love that band. And because everything I would do in classical music, I would kind of hear it in their music as well. And
Yeah.
that was kind of a new thing for me. Like, whoa, I can do that's cool. Like energetic music with what I actually have already. So, because really, you don't think when you're a classical musician, you don't really see how your violin or viola will fit in a metal band.
Right.
And then you hear this, and you're like, oh, it's genius.
Yeah, it's that sort of push toward virtuosity is in there. There's certainly a lot of very straight kind of like rhythms, very fast. But also it's like it occurs to me that it's like with like medieval music, it's like there's a lot of those open harmonies that are very much a part, obviously, in metal.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating. And you just sort of got the bug, and you're like, this is going to be part of my life.
Well, at the time, I think, when you're a teenager and you go through all those things, phases, I think metal was kind of a good escape at that time. So, and anger release.
Yeah.
I hate to say that because metal is not just aggressive or whatever, but I think the energy in it really helps, when you're going through something. And yeah, I was a good teenager, not creating too much problems, but it was quite a mess in my head at that time. So I think that's how I got into it more and more. And then, you start with maybe a genre and then you evolve a little bit. So at the beginning, like, you could not show me something with growls. I would never have hooked to it. And then as I got more into metal, and then I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, actually. Like, there's some types of growls that were, to me, more easy to listen to, especially like the death vocal, like the low ones, because they're very percussive, but like they blend well, often. So that to me was easier to listen to, and that's how it opened more doors into the metal realm. And then you discover all the subgenres of metal and everything. So,
well, it also sort of like creates this like baseline from which it's like once you get a little of that timbre down, it's easier to understand what's good about all of the little pockets.
Yeah. So you kind of need to enter the world. You open the door and then you see what's around, and then it's easier. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
It's so cool that you know all that stuff and that you. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say I know it. Like I would never go that far to say I know it. I just understand. I feel like I understand kind of the way music works and how it's like. Like with jazz, like that was the one thing, like people who don't understand free jazz just don't understand the language of jazz and the experience of jazz, even though it's very difficult to listen to in the same way that some of these like metal subgenres are very difficult to listen to. Once you understand the language and once you understand the process, you can then appreciate it at least enough to like experience it. And then once you experience it enough, then you can learn to enjoy it. Right?
Yeah,
I feel like that's the process.
So I'm not saying much because I will be like fully honest. Like if there's one style of music I know nothing of, it's not nothing, but like I don't know much about jazz. And to me, I really admire jazz players like you have no idea, because it's like to be able to create that kind of music, you need your theory at the tip of your fingers, and theory was never easy for me.
Oh yeah.
Like I learned it on the very late side, and I was somebody who would like do stuff by ear, but still like always. I think maybe it's like because I can't say it's because so many others don't have that problem, but for me, being, like listening to one single line, playing one single line, it's not like I don't play any chords on my instruments, right? So for me, understanding chords and hearing them was not as easy, I think. And then, as I said, if you start late and it's not part of what you've seen before, so I'm not that great in music theory, and I really admire how being a jazz player, you can just like, I don't know, it's almost instantaneous, you just like create following all those rules, like,
right.
And to me it's amazing. To me it's like
but I wonder, it's like, to go back to this and to talk about sort of, like, I'm very much a believer that we sort of, like, there are plenty of great musicians out there who didn't know shit from shit. They just didn't. They just made music. And the funny thing is, like, if you think about medieval music and you think about that as like an experience, those aren't harmony. It's not harmony. Those are individual melodies. You know what I mean? So it's like, quite plausibly, it's like, if your identity is such that you hear melodies, that's just a different skill.
Yeah. The
not to say jazz, and there are plenty of jazz players who know medieval music and came from that.
Yeah, they can do everything. It's just insane.
Yeah, but it's just, I think that's a fascinating thing when, like, you come from some sort of background, and ultimately it doesn't make you better or worse, it just makes you different.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. I'm still not great at theory.
Yeah. Well,
but it's I think you maybe got a point that I was maybe so much into counterpoint, which is just melodies over melodies and how they and harmony. And actually, I was, like, when we were taking harmony classes in school, I was really good at counterpoint. We would write melodies and stuff, and I would like really do super good in that class. And then in harmony class, I was not as great. So I think you might have a point.
Yeah,
maybe I just my brain listened to too much medieval music.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, yeah.
Well, and the other thing is that, it's like, you go back to being a singer, and the identity of a singer is just, and I'd say this as a singer, first and foremost, I tell it before, I play other instruments, but, the harmony, understanding harmony, complex harmony, was an incredible challenge for me. Still is to this day. Even though, I write with it sometimes, but it's like, just my mind, it just doesn't think that way naturally.
Well, you made me feel better, thanks. But I'm sorry, though.
No.
I'm sorry you had to struggle.
No. It was a process for me to come to terms with that and understand it. And you just end up, I just think that we as musicians, when you believe in it enough and you believe in that process, you find a way to bring your strengths forward.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much.
Mm-hmm. So, speaking of singing, you got here to Knoxville. You studied voice here, right?
I studied viola. I did a
viola.
master's in viola, and then I worked for a year because I was an immigrant, right? So, because I'm from Canada, right? So, I got like a work permit after my first master's, and the work permit was just good for 1 year. And then I started my second master's after this.
Got it. So you have 2 masters from UT. Got it.
Yeah. So the first one is in viola. The second is, viola performance. And the second one is voice performance, vocal performance. Can I speak today? It's hard. Okay. Speak English. Yes. So vocal performance for the second one, which is classical.
Yes. Yeah. And when did that all happen? I'm just trying to get my timeline straight. That was in...
Oh, the years.
Yeah.
Like how... So, yeah. 2008 is when I started my first master's and finished in 2010. And then I did like 2011 to 2014. I took 3 years for the voice one. And I think it was a good thing.
Yeah.
I'll be like fully honest. I wanted to stay longer.
Yeah.
So I stretched it a little bit. But... it was a good thing because we didn't discover that I was a contralto before the end of my 3rd year.
Wow.
As a singer. And so for all that time, I was pushing my voice to do something that was not right.
Yeah.
Trying to sing all the very high lyric mezzo stuff. And I think we knew, not necessarily always lyric mezzo, but I was really trying hard to sit up there because I was like, well, I'm a mezzo. I should be able to, right?
Yeah.
So I would really try hard to meet what that kind of voice is supposed to be. And then I would do all sorts of things in my throat and whatever to produce a sound that was a mezzo sound, and then you end up with tensions and all sorts of crap. So that was a very big process to get rid of all that.
Yeah.
And because once you discover your voice, you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's not what at all what I thought it was, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. I remember I have a couple people for whom have gone through a similar thing where they spent a lot of time in one sort of voice part and then just something happened, you know, either in lessons or whatever, and then it was just total, you know.
Yeah.
It's like taking off like a weighted vest or whatever, you know, and being able to just...
So, like, the process of finding your voice and not trying to fit in anything, and you just, as you said earlier, like just singing what feels good. I mean, I was not in pain anymore.
Yeah.
Every time I would sing the, you know, stuff that stays high all the time, not that I cannot go high, but it just was sitting too high. So I would end up like with so much tension, so much pain just from singing. And I was like, it can't be that. Like, why would people sing if it's how they feel, you know?
Yeah.
And then once you feel like how you're supposed to sing, what you're supposed to sing, it's like, it's actually an internal massage almost.
Yeah.
You know, like, and it just really, it's absolutely different. So, yeah, so as you said, taking off a weighted vest, but it's also very funny because all those singers who changed their fa, their type of voice category, they go almost through identity crisis.
Yeah.
and seeing this for years, I thought it was hilarious. I was like, yeah, they're going overboard. You know, it's not that bad, I'm sure. And then it happened to me, and I was like, oh, okay. So that type of like huge, big voice, like really, like, and it sounds almost like a man. I mean, this contralto's so low, right? So I went on YouTube for hours trying to find all the contraltos and like who sounds like me, like, you know, and trying to. So it is an identity crisis, but it's so ridiculous at the same time. But I can't talk because I went through the same. So I'm laughing with myself too now.
Well, so let me ask this then. So we're at simultaneous to all of this. What was the role of metal in your life? Were you out playing it? Were you singing it as well?
Yes. So I can't remember exactly what year I founded my first metal band. It's hard to remember. I think maybe 2006, 2007. Mm-hmm. And then it was very orchestral. It was with a friend who was doing film composition, and he was also a classical guitarist, and we wanted to do symphonic metal, which is the mixture of like classical and metal, but we wanted to really have an orchestra sound. We didn't want to just have like samples, right? We wanted the real deal. We're like, we're classical musicians, let's bring it. So we worked really hard on this, and it's kind of funny because just when we started doing this, I think so many bands started to hire orchestras and actually have the full orchestral sound, and we're like, oh, okay. We're not the only one. But, I mean, I'm not going to complain because obviously I like it, so it was nice to hear others doing it. Yeah.
Validation, if nothing else, right?
Yeah. So that's when I started to actually be involved more with metal. And also I was a guest for Quo Vadis, which is a melodic death metal band that was in Montreal. They were really well liked. So I was, I played violin for them, and I sang for another show. So yeah, that's how I kind of got more into metal, into participating into metal and just not listening to it. So I was singing and playing.
Mm-hmm. And were you moving? So a couple things that
I was still in Montreal at the time
when that was happening. Yeah. But when you got down here, and I guess my question is like, when you were singing classical and you're going through this vocal change, was metal a part of your life at that point?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Had you had inklings about your voice change in the metal world that maybe didn't, you know, was it not I'm curious what type of singing you were doing in the metal bands that were like.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So for the metal band, I was doing a little bit more. I was doing a mixture of like more, I would say, kind of rock, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you call it rock or whatever, but like more a little bit of belting and
mm-hmm.
you know, more non-classical voice. Let's call it that way. and of classical voice. And my non-classical voice is very low, like really just like when I'm speaking, right?
Right.
And I can go super low. And friends that are tenor have the same notes than I do, so it's a little. So for me, that was always weird, you know. And as I said, like I would compare myself to other mezzos and not feel necessarily that
mm-hmm.
it was. Yeah, it didn't. Something was not right, and I think the non-classical was showing me that.
Right.
But before jumping, I've always been somebody who follows my teachers very much.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if I mean,
that's like classical music, right? It's like you just.
Well, my way of thinking is like they have a lot more. They know a lot more than I do. So
mm-hmm.
unless they really show me that they don't respect me, or that they don't value me, or they think, you know, or unless there's something that's not right in the way I'm being treated, I will put my whole confidence in that person and say, like, look, like you made it this far, so of course you know better than I do, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that was not, in my case, I should not have done it that much.
Yeah.
I should have listened more to myself. I think the little voice you had, like you were saying, you know, like singing other stuff, you know, you kind of have an inkling of maybe there's something that's not right. I think I did have an inkling. I knew something was not right, but maybe if I had like researched more by myself and not just have blind confidence in my mentors, you know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and that took me a few years to kind of get to that thought too. Is that a mentor and a teacher doesn't know everything.
Yeah.
And there's so little contraltos out there that. And it's student contralto. I mean, once you hear a contralto that's a professional, you're not fixing stuff, right? You hear the finished product. So maybe if they hear somebody who's a contralto that's professional contralto, they'll be like, oh, that's a contralto. But when you have a student in front of you that's not doing everything right, how do you not diagnose the voice, but you know, like I'm not sure I would have been able to do this
mm-hmm.
to discover that this student was a contralto. So I had to take a step back and be like, okay, well, you know, so next time trust yourself more, and it's not anybody's fault, but just trust yourself, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of funny that you asked that question.
Well, I'm intrigued. Well, part of it is like, I mean, I feel like my vocal journey was that for my senior project in high school, we had to do like a project. I recorded a little EP of like some songs that I wrote and sang on the piano. And then I went to classical music school, and then 8 years later, after I went to classical music school, I had this idea in my brain that classical music fused with jazz was going to be my thing, and I was going to be this new music guy. But then I couldn't break myself away from it. Then when I finally did, and I listened to that album, I realized my voice sounded exactly the same. Years later, like, I mean, like the actual sound of my voice was the same before and after. I have more skills, I have more breath support, I have all this. But like the way I'm producing sound is exactly the same. So it was, you know, I know I went through that blind trusting in the process of doing this. And also because I was confused because I thought I needed to be a classical singer to survive making music. Mm-hmm. All this to say, boy, it's a journey.
It is.
It's such a journey.
And also your voice is kind of light. So I'm sure you have people like telling you, oh, I think you're a tenor, right?
Oh my gosh, all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was tenor, I was baritone.
And,
did a little
and just that, like being thrown from one to the other.
Yeah.
It gets old. Like I remember I went to a program in Austria, and this was right after I turned contralto. So, of course, I didn't master everything to really sound like fully have my voice out. And a young contralto doesn't sound like an older contralto. I mean, the voice develops so much later in life. Like now, I'm in my 30s, and my voice is finally there. Like I don't know how to explain that. So, for people who are not singers out there, it's some of the low notes will not be full. You'll sing like, oh, and it's going to sound almost like it, you can't fill it. It's and you're just not physically able to produce a very solid low note, even if you're trying. And then as you age, it just fills itself, and then you're like, oh, that's the notes that like my money notes are there now.
Yeah.
So as I was a young contralto, people were like sometimes questioning all the time. Even after I made that change, they were like, oh no, dear, you're not a contralto. And I'm like, and I had so many people questioning what I was. At some point, there's a man that was like, I'm never wrong. You are a dramatic soprano. And I'm like, dude, you have no idea how much it hurts to sing out there. Like all the time staying out there. And that was, I was sure by then I was a contralto. But he kept bugging me so much that I had tears in my eyes at that program in Australia. I'm like, I didn't come for this. Like, I didn't come to be like nonstop question. Just show me, to sing better. But like, please stop. So, for sure, I'm never wrong. And I'm like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Like, come in my body, just experience it, you know? So when you're saying it's a lot, like, you feel like you're being thrown between two worlds all the time. And it's like, please, just leave me alone. I'll do my own thing.
Well, that's hard, too, because it's like, I mean, you already had, I guess, at that point, this notion, at least, that you were living in two genre worlds, not to mention two vocal worlds.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you're... it goes back to this thing about teachers and investing in your teachers, and the idea that it's like they do have your best, theoretically, they do have your best interest in mind, but that is a very dated version of like how to approach. I mean, it like, and I say that not that it's a bad thing. Like, my mentors taught me so much, but there is, and I'm talking about this in like taking music from like this, we're talking about micro, thinking macro, their kids learning guitar on YouTube, you know what I mean? And like, is what they're doing any less, than what someone who goes to the classical program is doing? Maybe not.
It's kind of funny you say that, because I think when you grow up in the classical world, you're being told all the time that what you're doing is like the best, right? You're going to be like, we say in French, la crème de la crème, like top, like cream of cream, like top of like everything, And then, yes, of course, like you dedicate so many hours, and while your friends are playing outside and you're freaking 8 years old, you're practicing your violin, right? And you're like, what a life is this, And you're investing so much. You feel almost like an athlete, like you have to start early, and you never stop, and you put so much work. So you kind of believe that you're the shit. I'm sorry to say it that way, but you have that idea that because you're a classical musician, you're on top. And I know it's awful. I think it's a terrible way of seeing things. Yeah. But that's how you feel when you're in it. And then
well, jazz too. Like,
really?
That's it. Well, that's the thing about jazz is that, and I found this a lot. This idea that like, because of your ability to play harmony and because it's groove based, you can do anything. Which, on the one hand, technically, yes, you can. But the problem is, I've seen it time and time again. A jazz player gets on a gig, and they just take all of the musicality. I mean, like, they're doing things that are musical, but they take the actual like core essence of whatever that experience is supposed to be, the human to human connection part, and they just overcomplicate it with this and that and whatever. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, you'll find that from time to time. It's I imagine. I feel like it doesn't, like, metal is so virtuosic and arranged. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like there isn't a lot of space necessarily for that, or it's extra space for that, I guess. But I see it happen saw it happen in New York a lot. A guy would get hired for a gig and like wouldn't be tasteful. Wouldn't, that element dissipates because he can do anything, or she could do anything.
Well, I kind of see it. Like, I totally see how this could happen. I just never thought of that or witnessed it, Yeah. And because what I've witnessed is so kind of the opposite, because they have, like, some jazz musicians have, like, the ability to really create on the spot so much. And if they feed off each other, then it's beautiful and really strong, Right. And that's what I've witnessed, musicians feeding from each other. No, I didn't witness the I'm so cool, look at my skills type of
Yeah.
guy, you know, or
The
girl.
New York was rife with that when I lived in New
But
York.
that makes sense
Yeah.
because it's the same as virtuosity in classical music. Sometimes you lose completely, like my favorite players are not the one that are the most perfect.
Yeah. Who are your favorite players? Like,
Well, so Andrew Manzi, he's a Baroque player. One of my mentors was also a Baroque player, Olivier Brault, which I would listen to him all day, and that's why I really sought to learn with him. Also, I do like a lot Maxim Vangerov. I'm pronouncing all their names so wrong. Sorry, but yeah. So some of those classical players. But yeah, so for me, basically, it's important to be able to play hard stuff.
yeah.
To be on top of your game. But I'm not looking for this in music. What I'm looking for is the feels it gives me in the end of the day. You know, like
Yeah.
what emotion goes through and so the energy that's into it. I know it sounds very metaphysical.
I don't know. I think but what you're talking about, I also think is like, you're sort of, metal is such a great genre for you then, because I feel like, you know, in what you're describing, metal does have all of that. It has that virtuosity, but then there's also that moment where the drop hits and it's just, you're just sunk in the emotion, you're sunk in the music. And it's not about playing the most notes, it's about just feeling that collectively. You know.
And so I had a teacher that I absolutely love who told me one day, there's no emotions in music. You cannot pour your emotions in music. It's not going to work. It's notes and it's the way you play it and whatever. And I so disagree with that.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love that teacher. And he's been like amazing for me in so many ways. And as I said, like the relationship is amazing between the two of us. But like that statement
You
that
fundamentally
he said,
disagree, yeah.
I was like, I cannot disagree more with you.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was in high school. I was not even like, I think I just got into conservatory. I was in my like 5th year of high school or something. For us, it's the last one. So yeah, that to me, like I was like, no, that's where I started my identity as a musician, saying like what I'm gonna bring. And that's also when you choose your career, right? Like when you finish high school, you choose what you're going to do in college. I had pretty much A's and B+ in everything. And I was like, well, I don't really know what I'm going to do. Like I can do pretty much like, I don't know. And then I wanted to go sit in an orchestra rehearsal and Montreal Orchestra said no. Montreal Symphonic Orchestra. I don't know how they say it in English. Anyway. Orchestre Symphonique de Montréal. They said no, you can't sit in the rehearsal. And I'm like, what is that kind of, like, how do you want students to know what they're going into, you know? Anyways, so, but I thought, I really want to do something that will change the world in a way. Like, I want to help people around me. And my mom's a nurse, and I saw her, like, dedicate so much of herself into her job. And she would be an amazing nurse. Like, people would bring her gifts all the time.
Yeah.
So my way, I was like, okay, well, I don't. And she repeated very often, like it's a really hard field in Quebec, especially, to being in medicine. So
why's that? If you don't mind me asking.
Why? It's a mess. It's like right now, I think it takes. There's just, if I make it short, it's just there's not enough. How would you?
Like resources or
not enough nurses, not enough like the whole like employee corps.
Yeah,
there's not enough people working.
Yeah,
for the people to treat.
Oh man,
so they're working extremely long hours.
Yeah.
Like my mom would not drink water because she would have to go to the restroom, and she didn't have time to go to the restroom. What kind of job is that? You know, and being on your feet all the time and taking no break, not eating, and it was insane. I was looking at this and then
very metal.
I don't know. Yes, the very intense, like sad parts of metal.
Yeah.
That you rebel laughter. But no, she was always, she always gave so much of herself. So I wanted to make a change and do good for the people around me.
Yeah.
And to me, it was like, well, how can I do this? And then I thought, I can't abandon music. I've dedicated my whole youth to getting good. And where I'm now, it would be such a waste to put all these years of work. Because let's be honest, a lot of people who stop, like who really, really train to get into the classical schools, and then you get there, and then they change careers or whatever, they change path. They don't have time to go back and really practice as much as a full-time musician, right?
Yeah.
So I knew that there were chances if I was not going into music. And kudos to everybody who can do it. I know some, like, my husband does both. He's a musician and he's also a physicist.
Damn. Okay.
So yeah, some people have the energy to do that. I don't. So I knew that if I was going to take another career, I would not continue as much in music. So that's how I decided to go into music and really pursue it.
Yeah. Wow.
I totally went on another.
No, it's all good. That's what this show is all about. Well, you mentioned your husband, and this I do want to know more about your experience here in Knoxville. Do you, what music do you make here in town? Because I know you're part of some of the symphonies, you're some of the orchestras. What's the stuff you do around here?
Lots. I decided to be a freelancer. I was not so interested in being in an orchestra full time.
Yeah.
Because then you can't do. I mean, it ties you down, right?
Yeah. Is that the way it works around here? Like, if you're in one of the orchestras, you're.
Well, if you're a corps member, I don't think there were positions open for corps members very often, but the idea, like for bigger symphonies, I'm not talking about just Knoxville.
Yeah.
So if I was going to take that route of being an orchestra musician, I would have tried to get into any orchestra anywhere, because I mean, just getting a job is so hard. So you move according to where you're getting hired. But then, you need to be there for all the concerts, and it's hard to get out of there. Just like any job. Yeah. So I mean, a full-time job is a full-time job. So by being a freelancer, I actually play. I sub for Knoxville Symphony whenever they need an extra violist, somebody's out or whatever. They call me, or they email me in this day and age. I play very often for Oak Ridge Symphony, which is it's kind of cool. It's like 15 minutes from home.
Yeah.
People are super nice there. And I'm also a corps player for Symphony of the Mountains, which is about 2 hours from here. Yeah.
Where?
So it's in Kingsport, but we play all around.
Oh, okay.
So sometimes we're in Virginia, sometimes we're in North Carolina, and sometimes in Tennessee. So.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So that's what I do for the orchestras. I'm also a violin and viola teacher. I used to teach voice, but it's more work for me. So I'm just, especially for kids, because I didn't grow up with musicals.
And that's what
you teach kids, right? Or also Christian music. How do you call that? Not just Christian music, but
gospel worship.
Worship things, music, and all in English. Like, that's not at all in my repertoire. So for me to teach it, I need to learn those songs. Mm-hmm. And then I'm just spending so much time learning new music that is not necessarily my cup of tea.
Yeah.
That I just felt like it was not necessarily something I would do. So I still have one voice student. It's one of my little violinists. So she's taking both. So I do make some,
exceptions,
exceptions, but mostly I'm teaching violin and viola, and I used to have 35 students. Now I'm down to about 25, which is a little bit more healthy.
Yeah.
I just feel like with the orchestra it was too much. So and when I'm not doing this, sometimes I'll do collaborations with other metal bands, like what we call like being a guest for the album, or a guest for a song. So yeah. Yeah,
and you guys, because you have a studio, right? You guys.
Yeah, we have a recording studio. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna throw it out there. Wave Transform recording studio. So we have actually a lot of bands. I was gonna say metal bands, because we obviously metal bands come to us because we make. I don't know how to say that. On a fait nos preuves. We made the proof. That's not the way of saying. They hear what we do, and they like what we do, right? Mm-hmm. Or like the work we do. So, and and they recognize the experience, especially that Yannick had with Quo Vadis. So we have many metal bands that come in, but we also have folk musicians and like bluegrass, and also also I was talking about Christian music. We had also some artists like that were doing Christian music. So we really get of everything, and that's super cool to me. So it forced us to open really our horizons, because when we started mixing different genres that we're not as familiar with, well, then you really listen to the mix of other artists you get familiar with, and then you're like, oh, okay, cool. And if you have a good ear, whatever the style is, I think you can make it work, right? So you can mix it the right way and everything. So so we got in a lot of different genres, and lots. I didn't even mention rock. We do have a lot of rock artists. So we do recording, we do editing.
And now, do you mind if I ask, is this mostly like you obviously span a lot of geographic, with being from Canada? It's like, is it like, what percentage is like local folks? What percentage is like folks from just all over the place?
It depends of the years.
Yeah.
It's funny, right? But I think this year is mostly local. Some years we had like clients in Germany and in Canada as well. Yeah. I'm trying to remember all the countries, but yeah, I think mostly it was Germany and Canada. Yeah. But we kind of like on the website to put a little flag next to where they're, like the name of the band. Oh, cool! Flag. Yeah. So if you go on the website, you'll see. My memory's a bit scattered right now, but So we just maybe like percentage. I don't know. Right now, it's probably like 80% local right now. But that's now. It really depends.
When the work comes in, you'll just kind of take it.
Yeah, and sometimes like we will mix but not record. They'll record in different studios, especially if they're in other parts of the world. Then we'll do more of the mixing. So or even some editing sometimes. Yeah.
Wow. And so do you? Let's go to this then. Do you write music as well?
Oh yeah. So with my band Gone in April, what we do is I come up with melodies, and it's kind of funny. Like I'll just often it will come when I'm driving. No idea why. Probably because I can yell some melodies and nobody hears me. So even if it doesn't sound that great the first time, I'm fine. I'm in my little spaceship.
And then the people driving by you are just like, what is wrong with that person? I get that all the time.
I mean, my hair is blue already. Like in Knoxville, there's not a ton of colors, so I already get the weird looks. I'm fine. I don't mind anymore. So in the car when I'm driving, especially long distance, to go to the orchestras and stuff. So otherwise in nature, I really like. I'm a totally child of nature. Yeah. So when I'm walking in a trail or something, I have my phone with me. I just record ideas. So I record the melodies. Yannick, a drummer, puts the drums on the melodies. We send that to the guitarist Marc-André, who comes up with guitar riffs to put under the melodies, which I think is kind of amazing. You could do that. Usually, to me, it's the harmony thing again. But he's a jazz musician, see?
Right, yeah.
So he puts guitars, and then usually we have the bassist who adds his own bass line, and we do the vocal patterns for the dead vocals.
Got it.
So, yeah.
Now, what percentage of this band is are you all here in town, or
no? It's really
spread out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So our official bassist lives in California, and he's the bassist for Testament.
Oh,
and,
damn.
But he's really hard to tour with because he's always on tour with Testament. And he was in Death before, so now they have that project at Chual. So he tours with them as well. So super busy.
Yeah.
Amazing guy. Really funny. we have tons of fun. Super nice. And we often, it's kind of funny because when he comes to record in the studio, we actually go for trails, in the Smoky Mountains, and we try to find bears. He really
Most people try to avoid bears.
I
mean, you've heard
know,
of this,
but
yeah.
like the first time he was like, so can we see bears? And I'm
Oh,
like,
gosh.
it's not that easy to find them, you know? So we would actually look all over the pages, the Facebook pages of the Smoky Mountains.
Oh, jeez.
When people take pictures, we were here yesterday, the bears were there. So we I looked at all the trails where there were bears, and we actually found bears.
Really?
Yes, a mom and her cubs. So it was super cute.
Oh.
So he got to see his bears.
Oh, good. Good.
But, so yeah, Steve is in California. Yannick and I are in Knoxville. Our vocalist is also in Knoxville, but as we were discussing before we started the discussion with you guys on air. So our vocalist is not very much available for touring. So often we're going to have a vocalist from Quebec that does the touring with us. Our guitarist is also in Quebec. So yeah, we're a little spread out everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, that's awesome. You figure out how to make it work. If nothing else we learned in the time of COVID, it's like we can make this happen remotely.
Yeah. Yep. I think we all mastered Zoom by now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I want to ask this though. Lyrics, right? Are the lyrics yours?
Most of them are Yannick and I.
Yeah.
On this album that we're working on, Yannick's really busy right now because we just bought a tour bus a year ago. Because we didn't have enough going on. Oh yeah, another thing. I just passed my CDL. I'm extremely happy.
Oh my gosh,
so commercial
congrats.
driver's license.
Yeah.
I took lessons because I wanted to make sure that I was a good driver. Because driving a 45 feet a bus is kind of not the easiest thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's like 52,000 pounds or something. You know, like
you
it's
don't wanna...
it's so heavy. I was like,
Yeah.
I want to be really secure.
Yeah.
So I took lessons, and I obtained my commercial driver's license. So
Congratulations.
thank you. I'm so excited
Oh,
about
yeah.
it because. Yeah, for me that was a big step.
Oh yeah.
For Yannick, he was like always very comfortable driving a big thing. Like for him, it was very. He didn't even take lessons.
Wow.
And he passed the test.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, there's no way I would have passed that test without the lessons.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Do they make you parallel park it or anything like that?
There's like a dock alley.
Oh gosh.
It's like you know what it is.
I mean, I can imagine.
So
I feel like I
basically,
know.
you have to back into a tiny alley. It's really, really scary. That one is like, my poor instructor had to stay in the sun for like 8 hours while I was practicing this one. I just like nailed everything. Everything was going so great.
Except
and then
for that, yeah.
we get to this one, and then I just couldn't get it. And of course, like, he's outside with the cones and trying to like help me out, but always in the sun, and the sun of Tennessee is not the nicest thing.
Yeah, grueling.
Yeah, I felt so bad. I was like, I'm so sorry. I really want to get this.
Yeah. But you got it.
I got it the day before the test.
Oh, good.
How crazy is this, right?
Yeah.
And then I like nailed it multiple times.
You just will never park that thing in an alley ever again.
Well, now I know how to do it, so I don't mind. But it just took me forever to get there. And yeah, I have a friend who's a bus driver that also like gave me
Give you
some
tips.
Yeah, he was like, actually his tip was really simple. He was like, go super slow, like right on your brake when you're backing. And he said the problem that a lot of new drivers do is that they're just trying to back too fast.
Oh yeah. And
I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then got it. So so Yanni is working a lot with the bus right now. So he's not as available. So I took the majority of the lyric writing right now for this album. So I'm still thinking he might, jump in and take at least a song or two. But yeah. So, and we have a lot of lyrics because the growls they're really fast. They're really percussive and fast. So, and it's never the same pattern. So you can't really repeat lyrics.
Right.
So like the one I was working on yesterday, I was like, man, how many like paragraphs of words do I need to put on this thing? It's okay. You make the story longer, right? You spread it. But, so adventures in the lyric writing.
Oh yeah.
So do you also write your own songs?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was did a lot of songwriting when I was in New York. A little bit of co-writing. I'd say my identity is mostly wrapped up in songwriting, kind of these days. Yeah.
And what's the name of the band?
Well, my band is the Nick Corner Family, but it's kind of a moot because it's basically me. It's like just been me and other people and whoever I get around. But yeah, no.
So how do we find you and your music?
Well, that's what the irony is, that we're getting to the end of our discussion here. So I was going to ask the same thing about you. Maybe I'll tag with me, and then, but let's start for now. Where do we find your music? Where are we sending people to check out your stuff?
We have our webpage, www.guninapril.com. We're on Facebook. We just under Gun in April. We are on Instagram, and I think we have an account on Twitter. But let's be honest, like we're so lame with Twitter, so let's don't even look there. So yeah, Instagram, Facebook. We're also on YouTube. We have a bunch of videos there. So if you just type Gone in April, you'll see our videos.
Nice. I'm about to go into work, and I know I'm just going to go down the rabbit hole of checking out you guys' stuff.
Well, I'm going to do the same with yours. So with your project
there
as
we
well.
Go. There we go. Well, folks, anyone who wants to find out more about my work and my shows, it's nickcornerfamily.com. That's where you find me. Yeah, we are actually to the end of this interview. Somehow. Went so fast.
Yeah.
It was so great to get to know you.
I know, same with you. I mean, you sent me that message and I was like, whoa, this guy is super interesting.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I was really, really busy. So you started by sending a Facebook message that I read kind of on the late. But I think I kind of just like saw it really quick and I was like, I'll get to it later.
Yeah.
And then you sent an email to my website, my personal website. And then you got into a lot of details about all your.
Well, the thing is, I didn't want, like when you reach out to a stranger, it's very easy for that person to be like, this person is insane. We should not, I didn't. I wanted to make sure.
I'm insane too, so
I didn't know that. If I would have known, I just would have been like, don't worry, we're compatico. It's simpatico. It's all good. Yeah, so that's
so when I received so I told myself like, I'll get to it later, and then I received your email and I was like, and you told me more about your background, and I'm like, this guy is super interesting,
right? Yeah,
really cool. And I was like, okay, I need to do this.
I'm glad we worked it out.
Yeah,
this has been great.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here, and folks. Again, this is Meet Music Knoxville. I forgot to thank our sponsors at the beginning because I was so excited to dive into conversation. Thank you to Hutch and Howard Realty of Keller Williams, and Raven Records and Rarities are sponsors of Real Knoxville Music. Thank you guys so much. We can't do this without you. You help keep community alive in Knoxville and all these stories and great music on the air. So thank you so much. And thank you to all of our listeners. This has really been wonderful. Stay tuned. We go live the last Friday of every month. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.
wishes will come true.
It inside me, as my mouth is filled with pain. I know the time is leaving in my range. My time approaches, I will begin. I trust the deal, love for its fate. The strength, the greed, the power in the militant. From rags to riches, I prosper solemnly. Against my essence, I stand. What you will be on is something to be gained. My new world is new, and the rising will fall, and I guess it was seen. My noise becomes sleepless, my gaze becomes helpless. I'm here, I'll survive the rain. Of the game, I must stay ahead. Of my household is left me for dead. In the surely killer